Well, hey, welcome to A Valid Answer with Scott and Marshall. I am our own producer, so you're going to see me pushing buttons over here. Marshall, tell us where you are at right now, because right now is not actually Sunday night. Tell us what's going on.
I am somewhere outside of Vandenberg Air Force Base right now, hopefully, assuming the launch hasn't been scrubbed, watching SpaceX launch a satellite. And after they launch the satellite for the first time ever, they're going to land the booster at the base on land. So they've been landing the boosters. They've been landing them out to sea. This time they're going to land
because it's less dangerous, right?
Yes, exactly. But this time they're going to land it at the base. It's going to be a big, loud sonic boom. It's going to be at about 7:21, so around 7:30 at night is when this is going to kind of
This
happen.
should be airing at 5 o'clock, so just in a couple of hours. You guys
Right.
can, if you live in the Vandenberg area, take a listen, take a watch. Marshall's there watching it, so tell us what did it look like. Oh, sorry, that's the future. We can't.
Right. Well, it's going to be dark.
It's going to be dark.
We're going to just see the flames if we're lucky at that.
Why do they do it at dark? You would think like if they're trying to record it so they can measure it later. Why do they do it at nighttime instead of like in the daytime where they can get better footage of it and
Right.
study it better?
They launch. I don't know exactly why they launch at the times they do, other than they often have to hit a precise moment in space and time because the Earth is constantly rotating, and if they want a
No,
satellite
the Earth
in
is flat.
Oh my gosh, one of those. Well, now we know our topic. The client will want the satellite placed in a specific position or in a specific orbit or going around the Earth. Usually, the satellites launched from Vandenbergs are the ones that go from the North Pole to the South Pole. They're circumpolar.
Circumpolar. That's with the longitude or with the latitude?
Longitude.
With the longitude, because latitudes are okay.
Latitude is this way, and so the ones they launch from Cape Canaveral go around the Earth, more or less around the equator.
Yeah.
Whereas the ones from Vandenberg go from pole to pole. A lot of spy satellites are launched that way because
you can see the other.
You can. That's the only way you can
So
cover
is that
the
what they're
whole
launching?
planet. Well, no, they're launching I think it may be a communication satellite or something for Argentina, right? They do sometimes launch rockets at a certain time of day where the sun is obscuring the view, or it's difficult to see, or sometimes when they do test launches of a Minuteman missile, which they do 2 or 3 times a year from there, they launch them in the early morning hours because they don't want people to see, they don't want people to notice or to create panic or anything like that. So you remember
nuclear missile test.
Most of you probably remember what was a couple 2 or 3 years ago now. They had that spectacular evening launch.
They never told anybody about, so it was like the UFO.
Everybody went nuts, right? I knew what it was instantly when I saw it. My daughter was outside and she hollered at me and she's like, "Dad, what is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's a rocket. They launched a rocket," and it's kind of cool. But
so we need to have something to, it's a pastor and an atheist, a conservative and a liberal, left and right, which right on the screen. Yep, I'm on the right. Yep. But so we have to have something to argue about, even though this is happening and this is going on in space and everything like that. We're going to get into one of the most age-old debates that has ever struck really our society, and it cuts very deep down into the core of people's beings, and it can divide families, it can divide friendships, and it gets right in there and really just like cuts to the quick and separates people into 2 groups, and those groups are Star Wars or Star Trek.
Yep, Star Trek right here. I'm representing.
Now, if we could carry the camera into my office on the other side of this wall, you would see multiple Star Wars posters.
Chewbacca.
I have a life-size Chewbacca in my office that was made by my son as a costume. He made it himself out of duct tape, like 20 rolls of brown duct tape to make this Chewbacca costume. And I've got 4 lightsabers on display in my office, and I've made Star Wars fan films. I've made Star Wars lightsaber choreography fan films and entered them into competitions. Star Wars or Star Trek. So we're gonna have to force ourselves to recognize the shortcomings of Star Trek, and
What shortcomings?
there are no shortcomings in Star Wars, so there's nothing really to
Beam me up. There's no intelligent
yeah,
life here
yeah,
on the surface.
beam me up. Magic. Let's just magic on a show that says it's all about science. It's a science fiction with muddy science.
I don't know. There's what they call, it's called spooky action at a distance or something, where a subatomic particle in one space can be manipulated and it causes the exact same thing to happen somewhere else instantly.
So this is
like
the
time
Star
travel.
Trek pseudoscience of all the tachyon fields and the
Well, no, a tachyon is an actual thing, by the way.
right
But no,
dilithium
there's-
crystals and
Oh, I don't know about that, but hey,
no.
in
Not,
the
then they have
future we will-
trilithium. Yeah.
Right? In the future, we will discover all kinds of amazing new things out there, and we may use these things to power the starships of the future.
Yeah, we are already 20 years past what they said would be the eugenics age.
The
with
eugenics age?
Yeah, because
Oh,
Khan Noonien
that's
Singh
right.
was supposed to take over
Right.
the whole
Yep.
southern part of Asia in 1990 something.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
that
Okay,
was
so
the future. That
we're
was
not
the
exactly
future.
on the timeline, but we're close. But hey, if you want Star Wars, you literally have to go to another galaxy a long time ago, far away.
Now there is the possibility that Star Wars actually exists in the realm of our universe, because as a little kind of treat in episode 1, when it shows the entire Senate, when there's like 1,000 or 2,000, however many senators representing all these, if you look very low on one of the scenes, very low in the right hand corner, you will see a pod full of ETs.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, there's a pod full of ETs. So now that establishes that the Star Wars universe is the same with ET's universe. And of course, we know in the movies, ET came to Earth. And then
Right.
ET, while he was on Earth, recognized a kid dressed as Yoda and's all home.
wow.
So we're actually in the same
Got the Easter eggs going here.
universe here. Yeah, you got to watch those things. I'm a film buff. For those of you who don't know, I'm a film buff. Yes, I like Star Wars. I got Star Wars posters, but I also have a bunch of other posters. I am a big fan of Spielberg's work, and because of that, I'm also a fan of J.J. Abrams' work, because basically J.J. Abrams is making Spielberg movies again.
But he also made a Star Wars.
Yeah. So, well, here's
Star
the thing.
Trek.
Here is what makes
The
this.
reboot.
Yeah. Here's what makes this conversation interesting, because J.J. Abrams actually ties it all together, because J.J. Abrams made Star Trek movies and made Star Wars movies. And what he wanted to do, I'm sorry, but what he wanted to do when he first made the Star Trek movie in 2009, he said, let's make it a good movie. Let's make it more like Star Wars.
Oh, wow. Oh.
Because the
Okay.
Star Trek
All right.
movies up to that date were just, they just didn't have the action punch that, the adventure
Right.
punch. It was, I mean, you remember Star Trek the Motion Picture.
Oh, yeah.
Star Trek the
Yeah.
Motion Picture.
It's
I mean,
a bit of a snoozer.
well, I was going to say, it took about 3 viewings to get through it, because you would fall asleep about
Right.
partway through there. I remember being a kid with it on VHS tape, and I'd be like, fast forward, and, fast forward, stuff like that. So, okay, full disclosure, because I am a film buff. I have, even though I'm more of a Star Wars fan, I do have an appreciation and a knowledge of Star Trek, the movies mostly, because I really like the movie making and stuff like that. I never really got into the original series all that much. I grew up watching Next Generation on TV, but just never got into Deep Space Nine or Enterprise or Voyager, or just never was interested in those. My brother was always a really big, Chuck, if you're watching, my brother Chuck was always a really big Star Trek fan. He got into all of them. He knows all the characters and all that stuff. But at the same time, I also never really got into the expanded universe of Star Wars. Like, I've read like 1 or 2 books, and that was like, just for me, it's always been the movies. The movies is always what's
The
driven.
canon, if you will.
The canon, yes, exactly. The official
yeah.
canon, which now, when J.J. Abrams directed The Force Awakens, basically they uncanonized. Is that a word? They uncanonized all of the expanded universe novels. Basically, they said, and nope, that's no longer the Star Wars universe. This is where it's going.
Wow.
So does that make him the Pope?
Maybe so. The Pope of Star Wars.
The Pope of Star Wars, and is also now the unofficial Pope of Star Trek. He's like, how does that work? How does one person become the holy religious figure of two different religions? Because there are actually religions, like there's actually a Jedi religion here on Earth.
Yeah, you're right. I've heard of that.
And there are people who study, learn, and speak Klingon.
That's right. I was just going to say there's people who speak Klingon, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that's actually a full-on language.
Somebody had to make it up. I mean, the same thing. I mean, you look at you go
look
back.
at what Tolkien.
I was going to say, you look at
Rings.
he created the Elvish language, and that's just really like that would be like a study all on its own of getting that deep into creating a universe and creating a world. What in the movies in the show business they call world building. And doing that so much to have that, but it usually adds richness to the film by doing that much world building.
Well, I want to share with you why I like Star Trek.
Okay.
Why I like it so much more than Star Wars. Now, I do enjoy Star Wars.
Yeah.
But I like Star Trek quite a bit. One of the things is all of the shows, especially the shows made in the past 20 years, tend to focus on a philosophical dilemma.
Yes.
Which I really like that. I really like that because it's deep, complex problems. And you're sitting there and you're putting yourself in, the mind of Captain Janeway, right? And you're thinking, well, an orbital bombardment would get them to release the people they've captured from our away team. But obviously, violence is not the answer. And
that's why every Star Trek vessel has weapons. Anyway,
right,
sorry.
Right. But repeatedly, even though they have the weapons available, they only use them as an absolute last resort. They are always trying to find a peaceful solution to every problem. No matter how complex the problem is, force is the last option. And I really like that. I like the fact that you don't just, immediately pull out the lightsabers and start hacking at each other.
No, hold on. That's simply called aggressive negotiations.
Right? It is. I guess it is another form of as von Clausewitz said, war is politics by other means.
Yeah.
Right. So, but that's probably one of my favorite things about Star Wars is.
Oh, now he's a Star Wars fan.
I'm sorry, Star Trek. Forgive me. Star Trek.
Is that where the spaghetti monster lives then? The great spaghetti monster in the sky is one of the Star Trek characters?
Maybe.
The giant, what was it, the flying spaghetti monster? Yeah, sorry. Just trying to tie in atheism because atheism is really tied into Star Trek with the idea that Star Trek has gone out of its way to make anti-religious statements.
Well, Gene Roddenberry was an atheist.
Yes.
And
a progressive liberal.
Right. And when you see atheism or when you see religion in Star Trek, it's often sort of a backwaters thing. These people are a little less
Star Trek 5 was all about that.
Exactly. Yeah. So it kind of hits you over the head.
Mm-hmm.
So you see a lot of that. So
very unsubtly directed by William Shatner.
Right. So why are there no Christians on the Starship Enterprise? Well, because it's the future.
Yeah, because Christianity's been around for thousands of years, but suddenly in a couple hundred years, there's not going to be any. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Star Trek or no. Religions do die, but I don't want to devolve into that. I do find that interesting because religion is part of who we are as a species. We're the only organism that I know of that practices religion. Now, there's evidence.
You don't know what a dog is doing when a wolf is howling at the moon. That might be a religious thing.
It could be, but when Neanderthal man practiced religion, we believe. We have evidence of it. But basically, Homo sapiens is the only organism that we know of that practices religion. Yet it is central to who we are as a species. It's central to our development as a species. It's central to the development of civilization. Without religion, I don't even know if we would have civilization. Now, religion may follow civilization, but there's evidence to suggest that it predates civilization.
Wow.
So the two, I think, go hand in hand. And now, in Star Trek, you have this universe where there is really minimal religion or no religion, and then boom, all of this development. So it makes me wonder if religion has retarded our progress as a civilization, or if it's essential to it. I don't know. It could be one or the other.
He seems to be the producer, the creator of Star Trek seems to be saying that it's retarding
Right.
progress. That
Right.
without religion, then suddenly we'll have all kinds of progress.
Right.
Which I always love, because watching the all the episodes, you start watching all the episodes of people who are much better evolved 200 years later, and there's no religion, and it's a perfect utopian society, and they still have all the same problems of there's no money in our society, yet there's credits. That's money.
Yeah.
And they still have, and there's still the people, the whole trouble.
There's replicator rations in
Yeah,
Star Trek.
and you have even the whole episode of Trouble with Tribbles was all about a guy, all about a politician worried about how much it was costing, and it's like I thought there was no, but you can't have conflict, I guess, in your storytelling if you don't have all the things that make human conflict.
Exactly, and conflict is, if you guys don't know, conflict is the essence of a good story.
Yeah, in the essence of we try not to talk about something that we don't have some kind of conflict in, because the conflict was what makes the
Makes
time
it compelling. If
Yeah,
there's
makes it interesting.
That's what makes you and I interesting.
Yep.
Is there's conflict. If we had no conflict, if we agreed on everything, what would be the point?
Yeah, everybody be, and it would just be preaching to the choir, and everybody would just be, hey, glad handing each other and patting each other on the back and being like, yes, there's no point to that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Now, I will say I did also grow up on Star Trek. I really, really developed the way that I speak. This is really kind of crazy, but I actually developed the way that I speak by listening to Spock. Like, I really enjoyed the conciseness and the proper
speech.
What's that? Laconic speech. It was just the preciseness and the absolute attention to grammar that he just says the sentence in the most grammatically perfect, efficient way possible with whatever words he needs. I wish I could do it right now, but one of my favorite lines was from Star Trek 6 when they said, "What do we need to do now?" And he says, "What we need now is hold on, I got to remember exactly how it said, but what we need now is a feat of linguistic legerdemain and a degree of intrepidity." And I'm like, I had to look up what is legerdemain. I had to look that up, and I'm all, that is a great word. It literally means like a contortionist. And linguistic legerdemain. They had to fake that they knew a language in the next scene, and then a degree of intrepidity. We got to figure something out and be intrepid. But just that, what we need now is a feat of linguistic legerdemain and a degree of intrepidity. And I'm like,
well, Spock.
I wish I could talk like that all the freaking time.
Spock seems to be based heavily on Stoicism, which was a Roman philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to the Romans, you had the Spartans, and the Spartans were known for what's called laconic speech, meaning they would say something significant.
Sparta!
Right, something significant, but with as few words as possible.
Mm-hmm.
The Spartans regarded florid speech, if you will, talking and debating and arguing, as beneath them. They thought that was sort of, second-rate behavior.
So we're below the Spartans.
Yes, absolutely. We're basically idiots full of hot air, if compared to the Spartans. So they would try to say things with as few words as possible, and they would be concise,
Mm-hmm.
So like when they were told to surrender their weapons, they said, "Come take."
Yeah.
Come get them.
Come get them.
I have so many archers it will blot out the sun. Good, then we will fight in the shade.
Yeah.
There was no negotiation. There was no debate or arguing.
It was just clever. I'm just like, oh.
Yeah. Now, Stoicism, which is really kind of what I associate with Spock, the character of Spock, is a philosophy where you try to suppress all sorts of emotional responses.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you're going to be level, have no emotions, no feelings, no reactions to anything.
Yeah.
Because you are in absolute iron control over all of your feelings and even your sensations, even pain. You're not going to scream out in pain because you are in control. You are the master. And that's what you see when you see Spock or Tuvok in Voyager, who is also has a prominent role. So,
yeah, I appreciate that. And again, I do get a lot of the personality traits. I want to be like that a lot of times because I figure if I maintain control, then it means that much more when I let it go. Instead of just always flying off the handle. If this is, but if I get in your face saying, no, hold on. No, this is what you're going to do. All of a sudden it's like, oh, I don't normally see that from Scott.
It gets attention.
It gets attention. So if you walk softly and carry a big stick, and then when you have to whip that stick out, maybe you might have to, but then it'll mean something instead of always just being the person who's rattling your saber and going around. Speaking of sabers. Oh, that's called a segue in the business.
Yep. Lightsaber.
Yeah, the lightsaber, which it's the funniest thing when you look at George Lucas. George Lucas seems to be the one creator of a universe who knows the least about his own universe that he created. Like sometimes it feels like the things that he created, he's like, well, yeah, it's just going to be called this and this, but he didn't get into it. And then everybody's like, oh, that's what it is. Then later on, he's like, I don't know, is that what I said? It's like, he always refers to them. If you watch interviews, he always refers to them as laser swords. He calls them laser swords.
Really?
Yeah, he always calls them laser swords. And in the movie, it's your father's lightsaber. That establishes that as he said that. And everybody's like, there was only one time I think he did it on purpose. He put it in episode 1 when the not the most sour note of the Star Wars movies or the Star Wars franchise, but probably the second most sour note that most people think of, and that's little Annie. Little Anakin. Yeah, and that's not exactly a high point in Star Wars lore. But there's only one time where it says that where he mentions, "I saw your laser sword. Only Jedi's carry those weapons," and that's where in the canon it's referred to. So I guess he wanted to go ahead and put it in there that hey, people call it either way, And actually, oh my gosh, Rian Johnson did it too. Luke refers to he didn't say lightsaber in the big debate of this whole last year is The Last Jedi. I don't know if you saw that one. I personally, you ready, everybody? I loved it. I mean, it is that close to being my favorite Star Wars movie ever after Empire Strikes Back. I loved what they did with it. The whole idea behind that, we've established this whole thing that the Force is, if you go towards the dark side.
Spoilers here? There's going to be spoilers?
No, not really.
Right.
The idea.
You're safe to keep watching.
I guess spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but I mean, come on, it's
it's been out
for almost a year.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's already available on video. But the idea has always been that the Force is light and dark, and if you have to stay in the light, if you once you go down, Yoda says it, once you go down the dark path, forever will it dominate your destiny. You can't, and it's like, and then we find that we have a character that feels a calling to the dark and says, well, what is this? Because just doesn't know, not familiar, hasn't been taught the dogma, the religion of the Jedi, and just says, well, what's this? And looks at the dark side and literally, figuratively and literally dives in, like physically in the movie. She goes into the water and comes out and looks at the dark side and goes, nope, didn't have the answers for me. Like it was just like a, almost, I equate it to almost like alcoholism. Like some people have a genetic disposition to be addicted to alcohol. Like it's a genetic thing that runs in the family and they got to avoid it. And but there are other people who were like, take a drink, like, whatever, it's like it doesn't draw them. And it's not because this person's evil and this person's good. I'm not trying to make that connotation. I'm just saying there might be physical things. There might be, chemical imbalances, whatever it is, to where that can be more attaching. And it was this idea that, well, maybe the Force is the same way. That there is a light side and a dark side, but it's not like once you go down this path, it's irreversible. It just might be if you're a person of the light, the darkness won't attract you. Kind of thing. You look at previous characters like Luke and Anakin who wanted to be good but kept getting drawn to the bad. And then you juxtapose that to Adam Driver's character of Kylo Ren, who seems to be trying to be bad but keeps getting called to the good. Like I heard the call he talks about, I heard the call, I resisted the call of the good, and he's trying to do this. And then you have the character Rey, who's just like, I don't know anything about this history. I don't know what this is. There's something inside of me. I don't know what it is. Is it this? Is it that? I want to find out. And just looks and apparently her character has a propensity for good and looked at the bad, said, no, it doesn't draw me. I'm going to choose this. And I feel like it's a deeper philosophical discussion. Like I feel like Star Trek offers philosophy, but on a political level, not a spiritual level. Yeah, like, but not really like it's more thinking and
logic.
It's logic. It's
Yeah.
logic arguments, not heart arguments. Like not heart decisions. And it feels like Star Wars deals more with what's happening in the heart. That it's not
Because-
the decisions. It's not the what your brain makes happen. It's what's inside of you.
In the Star Trek universe, those debates are already concluded. You know, we've decided we're going to follow a path of peace rather than violence. Violence
Well,
will
only
be a
one
last
society
resort.
has.
Well, the Federation.
Yeah.
The Federation, which I assume is a form of a republic, if you will.
Which is it's basically trying to be what it's like the
United
it's like
Nations
the UN
of
saying
states.
yes, one day that will be us.
Right. Well,
We will actually matter one day.
even the logo of the United Federations
Is
of
the
Planets
United Nations.
basically a UN logo,
Yeah.
just redesigned. So there's
Subtle,
something there.
subtle.
So all of those philosophical debates are already concluded, and now it's watching the implication of that philosophy play out episode by episode by episode,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the series. Like I've been binge watching Star Trek Voyager again.
Mm-hmm.
You really see it come through in the series. And again, you know, there's a quick there's a problem, and it could quickly be solved by force. But instead, we're going to take the high road
Mm-hmm.
because philosophically, we've decided, even though the high road is more costly in terms of time or efficiency or something else, we're always going to take that higher, harder road
Mm-hmm.
because we're going to stay true to our core principles. Whereas in Star Wars,
Yeah, because they
people are
never
still-
violate the Prime Directive. Core
Well,
principles
Well, there's that's the whole thing. The Prime Directive, just so people understand what it is, it's a thing in Star Trek
that they
where-
always break.
They don't always break it, but the bottom line is if a civilization has not discovered warp drive technology, you are to not interfere with it in any way whatsoever.
It's more general than that. It's not to interfere with the. We're not. The idea is that the Federation is not here to interfere with your planet's way of thinking, unless, of course, your planet's way of thinking is what we determine to be evil. Then we will step in and stop it.
Well,
They've
well,
made their look at how literally in one of the old series episodes. Again, sorry that I don't know the actual episode. Literally, Captain Kirk is the devil who hands the apple to Eve and gives them knowledge.
mhm.
I mean, it's like, no, you guys shouldn't be doing this. You're serving what looks to be a god, and you guys shouldn't do that. So I'm going to step in because I know more than you guys, and I'm going to step in and affect the fate of your entire civilization based
Right.
on what I think I'm smarter.
That actually gets a little treatment in Star Trek Voyager. There's an episode where they talk about the people of the previous captains of history, and I think they even mentioned Captain Kirk and Spock and McCoy as people in their past. And they actually say that they were fast and loose with the rules, that they didn't quite adhere to Starfleet regulations. They didn't follow the book, if you will.
Yeah.
But now we've kind of grown out of that phase. It's no longer a Wild West frontier spirit. We're gonna
How could it
stay
be Wild
true.
West when it was 200 years in our future?
I'm speaking figuratively.
I know, but still, I'm saying it's amazing how in the Star Trek universe people keep making the same
Well,
mistakes.
Wild West is my own term.
Right, but I'm just saying
that
they
I've
keep-
inserted for clarity.
Right, but they keep making the same mistakes. Like they want to stand and say there is this proud civilization of people who have evolved and moved beyond these things, yet they still fall to those same things and make those same mistakes. It's the classic liberal progressive issue that I usually have, which is a liberal progressive will look at something really bad in history, and instead of saying let's not do that again, they'll say, wow, they did that wrong, but we're smarter now, so we're going to do it better this time.
Well,
And
sooner
keep
or
making
later
and
you do
keep
get
making the
things right.
same and keep making the same mistake instead of like, you know what? Maybe we just shouldn't touch that hot stove. Well, maybe I'll touch it right here. Ow! No, well, that was the wrong spot to do it. That was the wrong person. We're gonna touch it over here. Ow! God, no, that was probably just the wrong spot. No, let's grab it there. Ow! It's like,
Well, I don't
why
know
don't
why
you
you're
s-
touching a hot stove.
right, exactly.
But there are ways to handle hot objects safely without burning yourself
Mm-hmm.
if you ever need to handle an object that is very hot.
Yes.
So,
Typically, the manufacturer will let you know.
right? Thank goodness to liberal laws.
No,
and
that's what I'm
warning
saying.
labels.
The manufacturer of the universe.
Oh, well.
Yeah. So the manufacturer says, "Hey, don't touch the hot stove." Okay, we'll listen. And the people who don't believe in the manufacturer, well, I'm going to find a way to touch it. Well, not there. Whoop, not there. So, sorry, I had to steer a conversation somewhere into the conflict.
Well, I'm going to take the high road and not retaliate to that one because I want to stay on track here. This is a good discussion.
Yeah.
So
This is that deep soul discussion of Star Wars or Star Trek.
what is your favorite episode and why?
Of
Star Wars.
Star Wars. Quite honestly.
Then I'll tell you. Then I'll tell him why he's wrong.
Yeah. Quite honestly, I really do like the original one, which ends up being Episode 4, A New Hope, because it just has it's the spirit of what the whole franchise ultimately ends up being about, and it was just it's a straight up fantasy adventure story that wasn't so caught up in its own message that it was just, and it had these great action moments with these great comedy moments with this just stand up and cheer ending that it didn't have to carry the weight of being a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
So I still feel that I was 3 years old when it came out, so I didn't see it until it was on video. I never saw until they re-released them in '97. But I never saw Star Wars in the theater. I was still too young to see that. My parents say that I was there and I cried through it, but I don't remember it because I was only 3 or 4 years old. I do remember going to the theater and waiting in line to see Return of the Jedi. So I was old enough to remember seeing that. But it still, to me, has this feel of a really fun adventure fantasy movie that didn't have to take itself too seriously and didn't have the weight of being what it ultimately became. After that, every Star Wars movie was a Star Wars movie and had to live up to a certain thing and tell a certain story. And I even to this day, that's still my favorite one because it seems the most pure Star Wars movie.
And I would agree with you. And in fact, are you familiar with Joseph Campbell?
Yes. Oh yeah.
He was an expert.
I mean,
on
I didn't know him.
mythology.
I never met him, but
Well, he passed away, I think, in the 80s.
Yeah.
But he was.
He helped Lucas write it. Lucas was giving him
Yes,
copies of his
exactly.
script, and then he was giving him notes back.
Right. And so Joseph Campbell sort of figured out the whole. This is what makes a story. These are all the elements in a story.
Yeah.
He called it the hero journey. Every story is a hero journey, and it actually mirrors the progression of our life from birth to adolescence to adulthood to death.
There's whole lessons on when we teach Christian Youth Film Society. There's whole breakdowns on how to tell a hero's journey and how to tell your story and where the points are. You can get really sarcastic about it, I guess, or ironic about it in that. People have broken it all the way down to where 23 minutes into your movie, this should be happening, and at 45 minutes in the movie, this should be happening, and then this turn like they've broken it down. It becomes a scientific formula of it takes the heart of it and turns it into a Star Trek formula. Anyway.
Oh, whatever. But yeah, I have to agree. I do think the Episode 4, which was the original Star Wars, is certainly the best one in my book as well. I really. I think it's the quintessential story.
Okay, so if we narrow it down, original series, movies, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, where do you land?
I personally, my favorite franchise, my favorite series, I should say, is Next Generation.
It's what we grew up on.
Yes, we grew up, and I think that
we were in 7th and 8th grade when it came out. Yeah, it was part of our youth. We would watch it, on what I can't remember what days it would come on, but you would have to wait for the next week, and then it hit the cliffhanger at the end, and then you'd have to wait 6 months before they answered it, and you're like, come on.
Yeah, but I have to say though, my favorite Star Trek movie is Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
That's a pretty common favorite.
Yeah, it's got a lot of action.
Mm-hmm.
I like the starships. I like their design and how they look.
It's funny because going from original series,
which looks silly to me,
original series to the movies to Next Generation. To the Next Generation movies where they're getting into Enterprise E, and then even then the reboot with J.J. Abrams my favorite Enterprise is still the movies from motion picture to Star Trek 6. Like those, I had a model this big of that I made. Had the saucer section was this big, and I would get it and hang it by again, because I'm in the movies, I would get it and hang it by fishing string in a dark room and light it like that, and I'd move my camera trying to get those camera shots that they did and stuff like that.
really
Just couldn't
cool.
get it quite right because I didn't know what motion control was, how they shoot them. But I would build the model, and I had that, and it's still still to this date. When I'm watching those films, motion picture, Star Trek 2, 3, 4, when I'm watching those, I just look at the Enterprise. I'm like, that's still the best one.
Yeah. It's I like how the story it's based heavily on the story of Moby Dick, Captain.
Yeah,
Ahab,
and there's
in fact,
references in there
there's
quite a bit. There's
several
quotes
references,
even. Yeah.
Yes. So,
Although there is one quote that is it's an anachronism, doesn't make sense. Khan says to Kirk, "Have you heard the ancient Klingon proverb that says revenge is a dish that is best served cold?
Yeah.
It's very cold in space."
It's actually a French proverb.
I was going to say, how did he know a Klingon proverb? He never saw the Klingons. He was in Frozen, and put on the planet and stayed on that planet until the events of Star Trek 2. So he never even he didn't even know what Klingons are.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's a good
anachronistic.
point.
And then that quote, and you know who's a big Star Trek fan? Most people don't know. It's Quentin Tarantino.
There you go.
There's
I like
talks.
Quentin
There's
Tarantino.
talks of Tarantino making a Star Wars movie.
Oh my gosh!
And
is
like
he gonna-
in Kill Bill, that quote, it just says, "Revenge is a dish that is best served cold." It's at the beginning of one of the Kill Bills. I'm not sure if it's 1 or 2, and it says quote Klingon proverb.
There you go. Yeah, that would be a treat. He writes great dialogue. I love his scripts. And,
It'd be the bloodiest Star Trek movie ever.
It probably would be. But anyway.
First rated R Star Trek, full of F-bombs and.
Well, there you have it, folks.
Yeah. Star Wars versus Star Trek. Comment below.
Who do you think won?
Yeah, and where do you stand? Where do
Right.
you stand on the Star Wars versus Star Trek? This is the debate that will divide homes. It is a debate that crushes friendships, and it puts people. It is worse than any sports team rivalry. It's Star Trek, and if you have a chance to watch, which one was it? Oh, there was a funny. There was a. I don't know if it was a. Anyway, there's cartoons out there that mix the genres. It's
What
pretty
would
dang
win
funny.
between the Death Star and a Borg cube?
The Death Star.
Oh, I don't know the Borg cube though, because they could assimilate the crew of the Death Star and.
Well, they could
take over
assume
the Death Star.
they could. The Death Star just needs one shot.
Yes,
there was never
but-
a vessel in Star Trek that had the firepower to get one shot on the Borg ship.
Well, no, I understand that,
Yeah.
but in order to get that one shot on the Death Star, I mean that's a pretty unwieldy weapon.
That's
a
very
Death
true.
Star is designed to target planets, not starships, and certainly not a Borg cube, but very large, but still smaller than a planet. So
Yeah, we're gonna get back. We're gonna get back into it. The transporter. I mean, just talk about really bad show writing to give yourself a tool that literally will get you out of any situation ever. And now you have to come up with a reason in every episode why this tool doesn't work, because you've created a tool that will get you out of any problem.
the enemy is disrupting our transporter field. So there you
Exactly.
go.
So it's like that's just bad writing.
Well, I
But
don't know.
but I mean, as a
It's
Star
good
Wars fan,
storytelling
I
anyway.
guess I can't say much, because if you want to talk about bad writing, there's episodes 1, 2, and 3.
Right, Jar Jar Binks, folks. That's all I have to say. We're done. We're done. I win.
Ah,
Beam me up.
yeah, beam me up, great. So as a Star Trek fan, if somebody gives you problems saying, "Hey, beam me up, transporter," just look at them and say, "Jar Jar Binks."
That's it.
Mic drop.
That's it.
Hey, until next time, this has been a valid answer. A little lighthearted on this one. But we appreciate any comments and comment below and let us know where you stand on the great Star Trek, Star Wars debate. And we'll join in on that. Until next time, catch us at 5 o'clock on Sunday evenings here on kerncast.com. And until next time,
Live long and prosper.
may the force be with you.